Okay, we're starting the webinar. So, Assalamu alaikum and welcome to our AMC free webinar, which was made possible, of course, through the collaborative efforts of Ravish, the non-profit organization, UCMD local cabinet, and the Pakistan Physiological Society, the student chapter. Now, we're excited to have you join us today as we explore the AMC test. Now, what is the AMC test? I'm sure you people must know about it now that you've come to the webinar. Even for those people that don't know, it's the Australian Medical Council examination, a crucial step for international medical graduates who are aiming to practice medicine in Australia. Now, this webinar, of course, was made possible by two key people, aside from all of the societies involved. Dr. Faizan Zafar, a uh, a very well known medical instructor and a YouTuber whose YouTube channel will have a recording of this webinar. And to break down this process, this pathway in detail, and a very esteemed speaker, I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly, Dr. Michelle Ann Gregorio, who is a senior medical officer at the Far North London General Hospital and Training Center. Dr. Michelle, are you here with us?
Hello. Hi, can you hear me clearly?
Yes, yes.
Hello, good evening to you guys, doctors. I'm Michelle Gregorio. I'm from the Philippines, and I'll be breaking down AMC into hopefully more digestible bits. Thank you, Dr. Faizan, for inviting me on this webinar. And if I may, I share my slides?
Okay, yes,
Yes,
you
you've
can
been
share your
given
screen.
co-host. You can.
Okay. All right. Give Can you see the slides now?
Yes, your screen is clearly visible. Your
All right.
slides are.
Okay, so again, good evening, doctors. So I will be discussing about AMC webinar. So this is made through extensive research. I've researched for AMC for like a year. So before taking the exam itself, hopefully you guys will gain a bit of a better understanding on how it works and the resources and some other additional questions that hopefully I can answer as well. So sometimes I speak a bit quickly, so just tell me if I'm taking a bit too fast, okay? So I'll be starting. So let's go through the outline. So first I will be discussing what is AMC for those who are not familiar, and then we'll be going through AMC 1 resources.
Michelle, sorry to interrupt you. Can you share the whole slide because it's not clearly visible? Can you
Sorry, again?
uh, zoom or maximize the slide?
Oh, okay. Wait. Can you see the screen now?
Yes, the screen is now clearly visible. Thank
All
you.
right. Okay. All right. Sorry for that. So again, this is the outline of my discussion. So first, what is AMC? AMC 1, the resources for AMC 1, question banks, exam recalls, the timeline that I did for my exams, the fees for AMC 1, and then what comes after AMC 1. All right. Okay. First, so what is AMC? So AMC is an Australian Medical Council. It plays a critical role in maintaining the high standards for medical education and assessment across Australia. So basically, it is for the medical registration in Australia. It is similar to the NLE among Pakistanis, if I'm not NLE for National Licensure Examination, and FGME for the Indians who graduated overseas. So basically, they do the exam only, not the registration itself, okay? So the roles of the AMC again is for first assessment of international medical graduates, accreditation of medical schools. So there are certain schools that are well recognized by Australia, and then they do also advisory role and they have international recognition. Okay. So we have different pathways for AMC for under IMGs. So we have the standard pathway, the competent pathway, and the specialist pathway. So I will be focusing on the first one, which is the standard pathway. So these are for students or doctors who have a medical degree, but not from a recognized comparable countries. So not recognized comparable countries. So this includes countries such as India, Pakistan, Philippines. On the other hand, we have the competent pathway. These are from countries with equivalent training. So what do I mean by this? So these are medical doctors who graduated from the UK, from the European countries. So usually they are the one who will enter the competent pathway. Same for those people who took PLAB. Unfortunately, USMLE is not included in this pathway. So even if you completed USMLE 1 and 2, you are not eligible for the competent pathway. You have to start with the standard pathway. And then we have the specialist pathway. So these are for doctors who have already completed their residency, who are already diplomates. For example, you're already a surgeon or a anesthesiologist. They have a different pathway for you, so you can practice your specialty in Australia. So I'm not familiar with the second and third pathway, only the first pathway. Again, so AMC 1, so AMC is comprised of two exams. So we have AMC 1 and AMC 2. So similar to USMLE 1 and 2. So AMC 1 is a multiple choice question. On the other hand, AMC 2 is a OSCE or clinical exam. So AMC 1 is a multiple choice question comprised of 150 items. So this 150 items will be taken for 3.5 hours, so 3.5 hours. So tests usually are available from February to November and are week long. So usually Monday to Saturday. It is a computer-based exam hosted by the Pearson VUE test centers worldwide. So there's a test center in the Philippines, in Pakistan, in India, in Nigeria, everywhere, as long as there are Pearson VUE test centers. And it is a pass-fail scoring 250 of 500. So many of my friends have asked, do the scores matter? If I get like a score of 251, is that okay? Yes, it is very much okay. So for doctors who have a low passing score, for example, 251, 260, 255, it's fine as long as you pass because AMC will be looking at the word pass. They don't really look at how high your score is. So it's okay to just pass. It's a very difficult exam. And attempts are unlimited. So if you fail, for example, the first time, you can take it again after around 3 months. So attempts are unlimited. Okay. So what are the covered subjects in AMC 1? Of course, we have the general medicine, surgery, pediatrics, OBGYN, mental health or psych, and then population health or comments. Under population health, there are subjects that includes ethics, biostatistics, public health, that is all under population health. So this blueprint, the 30%, 20%, 12.5% are just relative. In my experience, these subjects overlap. So for example, you have a questions under OBGYN dealing with postpartum depression. So that can be a question under mental health, but still in OBGYN. And sometimes they play favorites. In my case, when I took the exam last June, there were a lot of OBGYN questions. So this blueprint is just relative. So it doesn't have a clear delineation of what is general med, which is surgery. It clearly overlaps, so you really have a lot to study for. And we have the passing rate here for AMC 1. So these statistics I got from the AMC website and for the year 2023 to 2024. So last year, 2023 to 2024, there was a total of around 6,500 doctors who took the AMC 1. Globally, the passing rate is only up to 51%. So just above half of the exam takers pass AMC 1. And that rises to around 60% for English-speaking countries and around 40 to 50% for non-English speaking countries. So if you think about it, it's a very hard exam. So why are we pushing for AMC 1? Why do we want to take this very difficult exam? So for one, there are a lot of career opportunities in Australia. So as compared to US and UK, so in USMLE, I heard, I'm not familiar, that the USMLE is a very competitive field. Australia is also competitive, but USMLE more. So it's difficult to get a matching. In UK, it is pretty accessible. But the problem with UK takers is it's a saturated market. Currently, there are a lot of P-Lab passers who are migrating to Australia for better opportunities. But in Australia, there are a lot of niche for new doctors, especially IMGs, because it's a large country and they have a lot of population. Usually areas of need advertises for IMGs. Okay. Then of course you have the high salary and benefits, which will be on my next slide. And then world-class working conditions. Of course, we all know that Australia has a very good working conditions. They value work-life balance and they actually promote mental health and among their doctors. Of course, education focus and evidence-based medicine, global recognition, and quality of life. Actually, it is the number 6 that made me want to take the AMC, the quality of life, because unfortunately here in my country, the quality of life is next to none for us doctors. Okay, high salary and benefits. So this is the current, as in this year's salary for RMOs, registrar, general practitioners, specialists, and consultants. So for resident medical officers, the lowest salary that you can get is around 89,000 Australian dollars to 120,000. So why is there a range? So 89,000 being on the lower end and then 120,000 because it depends on which state you go to. For example, the starting salary in New South Wales state is around 89. But if you go to Canberra for ACT or for example Queensland or Southern Australia, the starting salary would be around 110,000. So sometimes the more remote areas pays you more, which is, yeah. And then we have the registrar around 100,000. So what are the registrars? These are more senior, these are the decision makers. So they make around 120,000, 150,000. And then we have the general practitioners. So these people have their own clinic, around 200 to 350,000 or more. And for specialists or consultants, around 250,000 to 500,000. That's per year. Okay, so not bad, right? Not bad for someone starting. Now let's talk about resources. So resources. So I know that what makes AMC difficult is that there's a lot of unknown in the exam. As compared to taking USMLE, some of my friends did took a USMLE. They only have they have really specific resources. On the other hand, when you're taking the AMC, there's no such thing as singular. There's a lot of resources that you have to go through. There's a lot of guidelines. There's a lot of miscellaneous things to study for. Okay? One thing that you have to know when you're taking the AMC is that it is a guidelines-based exam. So when I say guidelines, they don't use books like Harrison's or they don't use textbooks. They are more on the guidelines itself. And when you're taking AMC 1, actually they're testing you at the level of an intern. So when you're entering, even if you're like a consultant in your own country, or even if you're already finished your residency in your own country, when you're taking AMC, you have to think like an intern. So that's what's also the difficult part about AMC. So here are the resources that I had used and may be useful to you as well. So first off, we have the AMC Handbook of Multiple Choice Questions, also known as the Blue Book. Here in the if you can see my mouse, so it's in the Blue Book, the Handbook of Multiple Questions. So this is an outdated handbook, but why do we still use it? Why do we have to go through it? Because we have to study the way of questioning of AMC. It is, I found it very different from my physician licensure exam here in the Philippines. So the handbook will help you gauge your knowledge of the certain topics as well as the line of questioning for AMC. But take it with a grain of salt. This handbook is very outdated. Some guidelines are not as it should be. So you have to search for guidelines as you go along through this handbook. Then of course you have John Murtagh's General Practice. So this is their book. But I don't suggest that you read it from cover to cover. So this is just a reference book. If you don't understand a certain topic, you can go through John Murtagh, but you don't have to read it like everything. I don't suggest that you read it. These are just basic things that you can go through if you forgot a concept or two. Same for Anthology of Medical Conditions. You don't need to read all through of it. I'm sure that you have encountered every condition you can during your medical school years. If you just forgot something, you can go through these two books, but you don't have to read everything through it. And then this one, the number for the RAC GP Red Book. This one you have to read from cover to cover. So the RAC GP Red Book is important for in terms of the population health subject. It contains the guidelines for different diseases. For example, cancer, obesity, osteoporosis. It's all in this handbook, and the latest one is the 10th edition. So you look for the latest one. I'm not sure when you guys are taking your exam, but the 10th edition is the latest for this year. So the Red Book contains guidelines in Australia. Then the Australian Therapeutic Guidelines. So this is an app. It contains the medications, the treatments for each and every diseases that you can find in Australia. This one you have to subscribe. So it's a bit expensive, but for me, this is worth it. Even doctors in Australia use Australian therapeutic guidelines when looking through treatments. And then, of course, other guidelines, we have the RAC-GP, the RANSCOG, the RCH. So, and then the Austra Roads for Australian guidelines in terms of driving, and for the ethics scans, medical ethics 101. So let me go back for the RAC-GP, RANSCOG, and RCH. So when studying for AMC, of course, you know what, for example, let's give you an example. For example, you're studying about bronchial asthma. I know as medical doctors, we already know how to manage bronchial asthma. But in taking the AMC 1, you have to study it in an Australian context. What do I mean by that? So you have to study their guidelines. If you're going to search for their guidelines, you type bronchial asthma RCH. All their resources are free online. So you can easily find these guidelines online and you don't have to pay for anything. So you will see a cascading type of questions which the guidelines will show you. Oh, wait. I'll try to show you later a picture of an example of the guidelines. Same for other treatments. For example, you're treating for celiac disease, you type RAC-GP celiac disease. For OBGYN, we have the RANS-COG, which would focus, for example, cervical screening or intrauterine fetal death. What would you do? You will use these guidelines. Again, I'm emphasizing that AMC1 is a guidelines-based exam. So most of your resources would come from this number 6, the RAC-GP RANS-COG RCH. Okay? And then for medical ethics, so I know that CAN's medical ethics is a USMLE book, but this has served me well because the problem with AMC is you'll never know the answers. If you're taking the AMC, or if you have taken before the AMC, you'll know that all the choices looks correct, but you'll never know which one is the correct answer. They don't have a certain, how do I place this? They don't have, or they don't give the correct answers, and I don't think we'll ever know what the correct answer is for those exams. Only they know. Alright, so again, I'm going to emphasize the number 6. You focus on this if you're going to take the exam. The RAC-GP, the RANS-COG, the RCH, the RANS-ZP, all the guidelines that they have in Australia. I'll show you later my timeline on how I went through these guidelines. Okay? Next, question banks. So I've been lurking in Reddit before, and there were a lot of questions about question banks. So the most famous of the question banks are Imedici, Amedex, M plus X. And I've used all three. Amedex and M plus X as well as Imedici. So Imedici is quite a newer platform. So Imedici was endorsed just this April 2025. Before, the most used Q banks are Amedex and M plus X. If you're going to ask me which question bank should I use or should I be using, I will strongly suggest Imedici. So Imedici has updated rationales, and their questions are very much the same for the questions that you'll see in the exam. Amedex is a bit outdated as well as M plus X. I hope I don't get sued for that, but that's just my own opinion. So Imedici has good questions. They have over 4,700 questions. I believe that if you went through the 4,700 questions, you'll pass AMC. Because some questions are taken verbatimly from the Imedici question banks. That's what I've noticed for the past April, May, June, July. For the past 4 months of exams. Amedex, there's a few questions that comes from here before, but not recently, as well as M plus X. Plus, Imedici would teach you how to rationalize the answers. It would teach you why some things are wrong. So it's a good practice, but it's very time consuming because the questions and rationales are very, very long. Next, let's talk about exam recalls. Are they important? So if I want you to get something from this webinar, this is it. Exam recalls are important. If you're going to take the exams, please find a group that does exam recalls, because sometimes half of the exam would come from recalls. So I have told you before that AMC is from Monday to Saturday. So usually the pattern that I have seen is from Monday, Tuesday, the questions would be coming from the past exams. So from the past few months. Wednesday, they turn on new questions. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, those questions, majority of the questions, 60 to 70% of those questions would be coming from the exam recalls. So not exactly the same questions, but they could tweak the questions, but basically the same topics. So I cannot emphasize this more. Yes, they are very important. And if you are going to take the AMC, please join an exam recall group. Where do I find these exam recall groups? So there's a lot. There's in Telegram, WhatsApp group. And usually these groups would need your placement letter before they let you join. So again, please do the exam recalls. Next, review centers, worth it or not? So review centers are a bit expensive. In my case, I spent over like 2,000 Australian dollars for my review center. So, is it worth it or not? For me, it is worth it if you have the extra money. If you don't, is the exam doable? Totally. You can do the exam without a review center. I've known of many doctors who passed the AMC without going through a review center, just through studying through the different guidelines and doing the exam recalls. The advantage of doing a review center is that it gives you you don't have to compile for anything, and they actually help you after the exams through like coaching or CV writing. So, is it worth it? Totally. But can you do it without review centers? Also a big yes. Okay? I'm not going to endorse any review centers. So, the one I used was Philippine based. They also accept the foreign students, but there's a lot of review centers around. I'm not sure if there's one in India or Pakistan or any other countries, but you can also find review centers in Australia, but I heard they are more expensive, around 3,500 for the entire review. Okay, next. So this was my timeline. So I took the exam this June 2025, so just a few months ago. And just a disclaimer, I took 6 months in reviewing because I was juggling 3 jobs. I was juggling 3 jobs, so I have an office job and 2 hospital jobs. So it took me 6 months. Some doctors who are actually focusing just on the exam if they don't have work or anything can take just around 2 to 3 months of review. But in my case, since I was working, it took me 6 months. Okay, so from December to January, so it took me some familiarization. So I familiarized myself on the concepts of AMC. So I read through the AMC Blue Book, the guidelines. I also familiarized some concepts in terms of Australian settings, reading and gathering guidelines. So as I have told you, you have to go through the RANSCOG, RACGP, RCH guidelines. I collected those and filed them into a folder for me to study later on. And then from February to April, so February, March, April, that's 3 months, I call this the intense review phase. So I memorize concepts, I do Anki cards, flashcards, and I also created and saved fast notes, as well as started answering Q banks. So at least around 10 to 20 questions per day. So, and then for May to June, so the last 2 months of review, I call this phase the final hooray. I just answered Q banks, joined recall groups, and looked through my fast notes if I forget anything. So why does this work? Because you've went through your notes thrice. So you familiarize, then you review, and then if you forget something, you go back to it. So again, AMC can be taken or can be reviewed for less than 6 months. It just depends on your capability and your time. In my case, I was working. Okay, AMC 1 exam fees. So AMC 1 is a pretty expensive exam. I'm not familiar how much USMLE is, but it's more expensive than PLAB. So the exam fee is around 2,920 Australian dollars. Then we also have the AMC portfolio application fee 510, the notary cam which is 100 if you're going to do the Q banks, around 110 to 200, that's for the iMedici, and then the review center is around 2,000 to 3,000 Australian dollars. So it's a bit expensive. By the way, It is expensive, yes. But is it worth it? It's also a yes. I've never known of a doctor who told me that I regret going to Australia. No one ever told me that, and I have a lot of doctor friends in Australia. So the exam may be expensive, but the return is also greater. Okay, next is the step-by-step guide to AMC 1 registration. So this is just a set of steps. First off, you have to create an Epic account. You just can type on Google Epic account creation and the first link will come. And then you have to do a notary cam identity verification where you will need your passport. You have to pay around $100 for this. After they verified you, you can upload your medical diploma to Epic. So Epic is a US-based website. So they will send your diploma to the AMC. So they will be the one who will be doing your verification. So after Epic verification and AMC acknowledgement, you will pay for the AMC portfolio fee and access to AMC portal, which is around 510 Australian dollars. And once they acknowledge you, you can now book for AMC Part 1 exam. Okay. So what comes after AMC? Again, as I have told, I will be focusing on the standard pathway, so not the other two pathways. So again, we have the AMC 1, the AMC 2, and dot comes with provisional registration. So this is a very chaotic pathway. This is a very chaotic pathway, but it summarizes the pathway in Australia quite clearly. So the first step is always to take the AMC 1 MCQ. So whether you're a specialist, you're a GP, you're anything, you still have to go through AMC 1 MCQ. So let's follow the lines. So let's start with the black arrow. So after AMC 1 MCQ, you can, option 1, apply for RMO or hospital work. So that's the resident medical officer. So I will repeat. After taking AMC 1, you can already apply for jobs. You can apply as an RMO or as a GP. So if you're applying for RMO, you have to look for hospitals that will sponsor you under limited registration. Because if you've already taken the AMC 1, you are under limited registration only. Now, if you're going to be a GP, for example, a certain clinic have sponsored you, you know someone and they sponsored you, you have to undergo the clinical exam or the work-based assessment in terms of PESCI. So if you're going to be an RMO in the hospital work, no need to go to PESCI. If you're going to be a GP, you need to undergo PESCI accreditation first. But again, if you've only passed AMC 1, that's just under limited registration. Now, for example, you've passed AMC 1 and decided that you don't want to be limited. You can go through AMC 2 clinicals. So, if AMC 1 global passing rate is 51%, the AMC 2 clinical passing rate is only 30%. Why is it very low? Because AMC 2 clinicals is in the context of Australian practice. So your clinical knowledge will be based on the clinical exams or clinical skills of an Australian graduate, which varies greatly from country to country. So for example, you've passed AMC 1, you decided to go to the RMO and you gain an unlimited registration. Later on, you can take AMC 2 clinicals or you can go through work-based assessment program and gain a provisional registration. After 1 year of provisional registration, which you will go through different rotations, meaning from OBGYN to pediatrics to Gen Med, that's 1 year rotation, you gain general registration. So when you're taking AMC 1, the goal is to get to this red part, the general registration. Because if you went through the general registration, you can now apply As a GP, you can have your own clinic. You can practice anywhere in Australia without any supervision. You can even go through specialization if you want to be a surgeon, if you want to be an OBGYN, if you want to be a hematologist. You have to reach this general registration first. Okay? So, the same goes for AMC2. So, AMC2, if you pass AMC2, you can work as an RMO or a GP and you can have provisional registration. So, the thing with limited registration is very few hospitals offer this. So, because they need to sponsor you, of course, they will look for people who have the already licensed or already there in Australia. Say for work-based assessment program, work-based assessment are schools or same with internship, but in this case, this is also very limited. They accept like less than 20 students or less than 50 students per year, and very few hospitals offer this. So if I were to take, if you're going to ask me which is the best pathway through all of this, I'm going to suggest AMC 1, then you do your AMC 2, you go through RMO, get a provisional registration, finish that 1 year rotation, and then you can be a GP in Australia already. Okay. So, okay, all right. So basically, that's a very short presentation. Do you have guys any question for me?
Okay.
Did I?
Okay. Thank you so much, Michelle, uh, for this amazing presentation. So now I'm going to take about the question from the participants. Okay. So participant, please share your question in the chat box so we can start the question from the Dr. Michelle. Okay. Okay, Dr. Michelle, can you explain what is a limited registration mean?
Okay, so when we say limited registration, it means that you have to find a hospital that will supervise you. From the word limited, you can only practice under that hospital. For example, here from the Philippines, I already passed AMC 1. I am now currently looking for a hospital who will sponsor me to have a supervised plan that will sponsor my visa or working visa in Australia. So they actually do this quite frequently.
Okay, so who can give the AMC? A participant asking, I think, the eligibility criteria of the AMC Part 1.
Okay, whether you've already done your internship or you're already a doctor in your own country, there's actually no limitations in taking AMC 1. If you're a third year MBBS or a fourth year MBBS student, you can already take the AMC 1. It's just a matter of after taking the AMC 1, what will you do? Because as I have said, under limited registration, most hospitals, of course, will be looking for clinical experience. It is very hard to get a job without clinical experience as an IMG.
Okay, so another question, what about the job saturation in Australia as compared to the other country like US, England, Ireland, Canada?
Okay. So I heard this from a friend. Well, a friend, yes. I heard this from a friend, but apparently, Australia is still lacking for around like 4,000 to 5,000 doctors. So there are very few Australian doctors in their own country, and of course, they're outsourcing doctors from outside their own country. But the thing is, just this year, they opened the borders for other countries as well. So there's competition, but I would say that not as much as UK or USML or in US. So for me, still a
Okay,
better opportunity. The market is not that saturated.
okay. Another question is that the participant asked if the someone is already passed USMLE step 1 and step 2, still he give AMC part 1, are he exempted?
Yeah. Unfortunately, yes. Yes. If you've passed USMLE and USMLE 1 and 2, you still have to take the AMC 1. Same with doing your PLAB. So, If you've already passed PLAB 1 and PLAB 2, you still need to take AMC 1. However, there's a however. If, for example, you've taken PLAB 1 and PLAB 2, and you've done an internship, you don't need to take the AMC 2 anymore. On the other hand, USMLE is not the same. You have to go through AMC 1 and 2 because USMLE is not comparable or is not under the competent pathway. Was that clear? So again, USMLE not comparable. PLAB comparable. So if you've done your PLAB 1 and 2 and internship, you can take the AMC 1 but not take the AMC 2. But if you've done your USMLE 1 and 2, you still have to go through those 2 exams.
There is another question. What improve our CV after the AMC 1 to get job in Australia? And what if
Okay.
the spouse has PR?
Okay, all right. That is a very good question, and that one I can answer. Okay, so for you to improve your CV, AMC or Australian hospitals value clinical experience. So if you do your jobs in the rural health, if you're teaching, if you're going to look at the job descriptions for AMC, they always have job opportunities. They always have a certain paragraph there that are you willing to teach, or are you willing to teach your colleagues, or do you have any teaching experience? That's a huge point. Of course, other certifications and research, also another way of going through the Australian healthcare. So if you're going through Australian healthcare, you can take your masterals, you can do your research and go through AMC. So yes.
The another part of this question is she asked if her spouse has PR in the Australia. So does it improve the job opportunity?
Very much. Yes. That is if you're already in Australia. Because if you're already in Australia, they don't have to sponsor you to go there. So there's actually a higher chance of you being recruited as compared to those doctors or students who are still in their home country. I would like to emphasize one thing. So please have a clinical experience before applying for AMC 1 and 2. So you can take the AMC 1, you can take the AMC 2. It improves your chances, but clinical experience is very much necessary. Your internship, it counts as experience. You need at least 1 to 2 years of experience because it's actually in the job description. You have to have a 12 months of postgraduate practice for you to be considered. So one question was, do I have to finish my in-house job to take AMC 1? No, you don't have to do that. But for you to get a job, to secure a job, you need clinical experience. Okay.
Okay, another question. Does only Australian clinical experience matter? Like I think you already answered this question.
Yeah, if you have you have Australian, sorry, what was the question? If
Okay, uh, the participant asked a question. Does only the Australian clinical experience matter?
no, it it what matters is you have the clinical experience, whether it's from your home country in Australia or in any part of the world. Australian experience not that much of a heavy. Of course, it would be nice. That's why there are observerships, but it's not really that heavy in terms of. I've known a lot of doctors who have like 5 years of experience or 2 years of experience, and they get good offers because they already have clinical experience in their home country. It's not necessarily from from Australia itself.
Okay, thank you, my mission. Another question. What is a pathway for those doctors who's doing their specialization in their home country? So,
So we have the specialist pathway. I'm not familiar with the whole pathway itself. They have their own. So that's called the specialist pathway. So it means, but it's more expensive. I will tell you that it's more expensive than the standard pathway. But for example, if you finish your residency, for example, in pathology, in surgery, in anesthesiology, and you still want to practice that same specialty without going through AMC 1 and 2, you can, but it's a bit expensive and there's not much guarantee from what I've heard. Okay. What else?
Okay, why it is difficult to go in surgery in Australia?
Why is it difficult to? Sorry?
The participant asked the question, why it is difficult to go in a surgery in Australia?
Because they have very strict training and they actually sadly prioritize their own graduates. So those who graduated already in Australia, they prioritize those. But it doesn't mean that it's impossible. It's just a bit difficult. Competitive fields includes dermatology, pathology, ENT. They have their own programs which can be difficult to get into but not impossible.
Michelle is another question, just like in a USMLE, or other exams, elective research, and other different experience like volunteer work help
It
in getting match in the US. So what about in case of the AMC? Is it helpful?
Yes, very much so. So you will be putting it in your CV, yes. And it is very important that you have clinical experience. Research is a plus point. If you're teaching, that's also a plus point. If you do volunteer work, very much plus points. The only not so everything helps actually. I wouldn't say I won't discount any other experience because it ultimately makes you a better doctor in their eyes. In some areas, like for example in Darwin, they value rural health work. So if you have that in your CV, they would likely notice it better. Because there are certain job descriptions and there are certain advertisements who actually really put in their job descriptions that you should have in experience in rural health work. So if you have that, that's also nice. Also also other certifications such as ALS, or if you're a pediatric ALS, BLS, that's also a plus point.
Okay. Another question, what is a PESCI exam?
It's not an exam. So PSCI, it's not an exam. So that's pesky. Wait, I will pesky. Wait, I'm just looking through my notes. Pesky. So it's actually pre-employment structured clinical interview. So you only take pesky if you're applying as a GP. So for example, as I have said, if a clinic sponsored you to go to Australia, so you have to pass the interview. So it's not an exam, it's an interview.
Okay. So can an IMG get into the surgery? Is
Can
this possible?
an IMG get into?
Surgery training in Australia.
Yes, very much so. They can. It's just a bit difficult, but it's not impossible. My God, you've seen my next slide.
Okay, can you stop share the screen? So,
Okay.
uh, thank you. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, another question. How much help can MRCP in AMC? So does the MRCP exam helpful in AMC?
Sorry, what's MRCP? I'm not familiar.
Okay, so sorry, it's MRCP is like a medicine exam for the UK as a consultant exam. So the majority of chunk is a medicine in MRCP.
I'm not familiar with that. I think it still falls if you've taken the UK exam, it can fall under the competent pathway. So I'm not familiar.
Okay. Okay. Another question. After 2 years of experience, NHS experience in UK,
So you
are you
have to
eligible
pass
for?
AMC 1. You have already passed PLAB 1 and PLAB 2 because you have already experience in NHS, right?
Yes.
You just have to pass AMC 1. You don't need to go through AMC 2 anymore.
Okay. Still, you have to pass AMC one if you have
Yes.
working experience in England.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. I'm seeing the questions now because I'm not in the screen mode already. So there's a certain question, can our relatives sponsor us? So you can be sponsored by your spouse or your father or mother, but not your sister, not your aunts, just your mother, father, and your spouse. Other than that, nobody can sponsor you. In terms of jobs, clinics can also sponsor you depending in how nice they are. Then,
Yeah. Another question. If a candidate has taken and passed the NZRX exam,
yes,
would this?
that actually falls under competent pathway. So if you've taken NZREX, you can actually apply for AMC 1 and then you can go about your way. You still need to take AMC 1 but no need to take for AMC 2.
Okay.
So that's under competent pathway.
Okay. Another question from the participant on WhatsApp. So, any country which accept AMC other than Australia?
Okay, yeah. AMC, wait. I think, yeah. It's okay, so any countries that accept AMC, New Zealand accepts AMC as well as UAE and Qatar, but most countries you still need to get their own exams. But New Zealand and Australia are basically sibling countries, so if you pass the one to the other, you can work in both countries.
Okay. Another question. Is there any time limit for appearing in AMC2, provided that you are a registered medical RMO job already?
Ideally within 2 years. So for example, you've passed your AMC 1, you already get an RMO job or a GP, so you're under limited registration. So usually your job is under limited registration, and some hospitals would request you to take the exam after 2 years. Or you can just keep renewing your limited registration. But you'll forever be tied to that certain hospital, or unless you can find another hospital that will sponsor you.
Okay. So, again, I think another question that is a repetition, but I think the participant have doesn't clear about what he asked. So the question is that, give me 1 minute. What is it? Just like in the MLE pathway, US MLE pathway, your electives, research, and other different experience matter when it comes to the Australia in
Yes,
getting job.
yes, it matters. Everything matters. Don't discount anything. Experience is experience. If you're teaching, if you're working as a government physician, if you're working as a school physician, it all matters. If you're getting certificates, all your certificates would also matter. Because if you will look through the job description again, this is based from my experience in applying jobs. They value continuous learning. So all the certificates that you study for can be counted in your CV.
Okay, so another question, that is how long can you stay as a RMO after clearing AMC Part 1?
Around 2 years, but you have to renew your registration yearly. So again, as I have said, if you've under limited registration, most hospitals would request you to take the AMC2 after 2 years at the list.
Okay, another question, are electives in Australia useful if senior doctor can refer you and you can include the reference in your CV too?
Electives in Australia, so you've got an observership of sorts. Is that it?
Yes, yes.
So, yes, actually yes, it's very 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 helpful to get an observership in Australia. And you can certainly include it in your CV. It will make your CV better because that is Australian experience, but it is very expensive. It's around 12,000 Australian dollars to get an observership.
Oh, that's very expensive.
Yes, very expensive, I know.
Okay, how hard is get to RMO job? Your
RMO, so
experience.
if you completed AMC 1, so there's a bit of competition. Um, under limited registration. But if you're getting an RMO job with AMC2, there are certainly more opportunities. I've heard of friends who passed AMC1 like earlier this year and got the job like 4 months after applications. So around 4 to 5 months of applications. And then I've also known of other students who passed AMC2 already and had a job opportunity already after 3 months.
Okay, so what is the ideal time for AMC?
Ideal time for me would be when you have clinical experience already. Because all the questions in AMC1 is clinical situations. So it would help if you've already done your in-house jobs or your internships. But you can still take the AMC1 while you're on your fourth year or your final year of MBBS or before doing your house job, but it would certainly help if you have a clinical context already.
Okay, another question. In order to be RMO, do you need a clinical rotation along with the AMC part one, or just need a part one only?
Sorry, if you are applying for
Okay, I am repeating. I am in order to get RMO job. Do you need clinical rotation along with the part one, or just need a AMC part one?
okay. So as I have mentioned earlier, yes, you can apply already for an RMO job after AMC 1. However, they require 1 to 2 years of clinical experience. So your in-house job already counts as 1 year. So please finish your in-house jobs. My suggestion would be is to review or take the exam while doing your in-house jobs so you can already gain an experience.
Okay, there is another question that's from WhatsApp. Okay, so how is the working environment for women, gender, and racial discrimination in Australia?
Okay, so this one I have very good knowledge about this because I've also asked for this one to my friends who are already working there. So actually, not to toot the horn of Asian people who are applying for jobs in Australia, but they like us very much. They like IMGs in Australia because we have good work ethics. Okay? And Australia has lots of Australia has a lot of immigrants. So they don't really there's not much racism from what I've heard, even in any other field. So even in tech field or in engineering field, in medical field, there's not much racial discrimination. Of course, I'm not saying there's none. There's not much as compared to other countries.
Again, does PR help? This is
That's your help. Yes. Yes, it does. Very much. 100% it helps. Being a permanent resident helps so much because they don't have to sponsor you. You're already there. So that's less work for them. So if you're a permanent resident in Australia, yes.
okay. There's another. Can we pass both exam under 1 year?
Oh yeah, you can. I've known of a person who took the AMC 1 February and passed the AMC 2 in November.
Okay. This is a from. This is my question. In I heard from a lot of people there is 21% passing percentage of AMC. That is a very low percentage when we compare to the USMLE, which is
Yeah.
almost 85 to 90% passing
Yes.
USMLE. That is a very low. So why the percentage is so low, AMC passing percentage?
So, okay, so for AMC 1, the passing rate globally is 51%. For AMC 2, the passing rate is only 31%. Yes, I agree it is very, very low, right? But you have to think it's because all the clinical situations are occurring in Australian situations. So, all Australian clinical situations. So, if you don't have an experience in Australian clinics or Australian hospitals, Australian healthcare, it would really be difficult because they have a different sense of culture. For example, this is often the example that I use. So I work as a pediatric hospitalist. So I have a very, 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 very hard time in answering the pediatric questions in AMC, even though I'm a pediatric hospitalist, because I unconsciously apply the knowledge that I have gained here in the Philippines as compared to the knowledge that I should be learning in Australia. So they have very different cultures. That's why the application is also different. That's why I'm telling you to please finish your clinical rotations first so you can have a gauge of your clinical situations first. Because all the questions are situational.
Okay, so what is your opinion as compared to CLAB, England, when we comparing England to Australia? Your opinion?
In terms of the jobs or in terms of the exam?
Jobs opportunity, market saturation.
Mm, from my friends. Also from my friends. Wow, I have a lot of friends. Okay, from my friends who are already in Europe in who took already the PLAB, they're saying that the market is very much saturated. I've known a person who already passed PLAB 1 and PLAB 2 and yet cannot get a job. So she's thinking of taking the AMC 1 because it has better less market saturation as compared to the UK. Actually, that's the situation right now. There are a lot of doctors who took the PLAB 1 and 2 who's going to Australia. Sorry, I think you're on mute.
Okay, sorry. So what about the MBBS marks? Does they matter in AMC?
MBBS. Sorry?
So MBBS is basically this is a basic medical degree in Pakistan and India.
Okay.
So what about the marks and grading of MBBS? Does it helpful in getting a job? Is
I I I don't think so. If you even get a grade, a not so good grade, as long as you have the diploma, It's fine.
Okay, there is another question. Can you get your spouse to Australia after getting RMO job?
Yes, yes, a big fat yes, yes. So even if you have a wife, a kid, if you get a job offer, actually most hospitals are willing to sponsor your entire family to move there. That's actually a pretty easy one.
Okay, I'm sorry for interrupting. I also have a question from WhatsApp's side. Now, I'm sure you've answered this before, but many people like to compare their wages, what they would make, aside from how difficult it is to go to a certain country. Now, in comparison, the US or the UK, in statistics, the US, the general practitioner earns $200,000 per annual, like per year. Of course, that gets diminished because of all of the insurance and everything that you have to buy. That salary gets diminished pretty quickly. In comparison, in the UK or in Europe, you get 80,000 euros or pounds annually for a general practitioner, an average general practitioner. That is a major downside jump from the US, but the UK and Europe have free healthcare and a lot of the things that the US doesn't have, so that makes up for it. uh, Keeping that in mind, what do you think, is the AMC or is Australia worth it in comparison to the UK or the US? Keeping in mind that the UK has free healthcare, has certain services that are free despite their long wait time. Do you think the Australian pathway is worth it?
Yes. I've never heard of a colleague who told me that they regret taking the AMC even though it's very expensive. Because even though for example, as I have said, the lowest wage that you can get is around 89,000, that's less tax. So let's say around 70,000 per year. And the cost of living is not, this is from the experience of my sister. She's already there. I've already asked about these questions. Um Wait, I'll show you the slide. Wait, the slide that you saw a while ago. Mhm. Okay, can you see the slide?
Yes.
Okay, so this is a simple breakdown of your cost of living in Australia. So of course, this is a simplified version, but for example, you're earning around the lowest possible salary that you can get as an RMO, which is 89,000. I know of this because I've been applying for jobs. So that's the lowest offer that they can go, 89,000. And let's say that they are taxed. So 89,000 less 20% of that. So that's around 71,200 per year. If you divide that by 12, so that's around 5,933 per month. So that's 5,933 Australian dollars that you're going to earn per month. So if you're going to do this, even if you're going to add all this in the higher end, so if you're going to do rent, that's 2,000. By the way, this is all based on city living. So my sister is from New South Wales. That's the city. Of course, there's less. There's the cost of living is lower in other states. So New South Wales is a city, so much more expensive rent, much more expensive groceries. And then the groceries around, let's say, 500. And then for transport, around 200. But my sister was saying it's only like 120. But for the sake of thinking ahead, then utilities around 100 per month. They pay their utilities quarterly. And then miscellaneous, if for example you like eating out, so that's 400. So that's 3,200. And if you're earning around 5,933 per month, you have a surplus of 2,733 Australian dollars of savings that you can have. And it also helps that, of course, in Australia, healthcare is free, so you don't spend on that. And you also have the tax return at the end of the year, so a percentage of your tax returns to you. So yes, it is very much worth it. I hope I explained that clearly.
Okay, you are explaining very well. Okay, so there is another question on the WhatsApp. So, uh, so I think I'm reading the whole question. Uh, does it matter if we are held back for a year in a medical school due to failing in a subject? Will it impact our CV?
No, no. I can confidently say no. As I have said earlier, as long as you have the diploma, they, yeah, as long as you have the diploma. Because when you're applying for jobs, they look at your cover letter, the key selection criteria, your diploma. They really don't ask for your transcript of records. They only look at those three things. So that's all that matters. And of course, your reference reports. So when you say reference reports, some states ask for reference reports. So they ask, instead of referral letters or recommendation letters, they ask for referee reports, which they have to fill up.
Okay, can you a little bit highlight about the research, the role of research?
The research, okay. So another pathway that is used by IMGs into entering the Australian market, okay, is, for example, you've passed AMC 1 and you don't want to get AMC 2. You go into research, for example, you take your masterals in public health, gain some connections, and go from there. So you can do that. That's one way. Another way is if you are into research, there are actually certain positions that are research based or research centered, which also pays quite handsomely, if I must say. So that's also part. And if you want to go into training in Australia, they also require you to go into research.
Okay, so what is the role of the study partner for preparing AMC Part 1 exam?
The rule?
Uh, so study partner.
Okay, the study partner. Um, for me, it works very, very favorably. If I don't have a study partner, I would have slept through all day because I'm so tired from my job. So having a study partner, but it really depends on your studying style. If you like studying alone, that's okay too. But having a study partner is different from having a study recall group. Let me emphasize that again. Recall groups are different from study partners. So you can just study on your own, but please, please, please join recall groups. So that's different, okay?
Uh, can you please elaborate more on that reference report? Is it supposed to be from the Australian doctor?
No. It's the same as recommendation letter, but some states, for example, Canberra, they ask for referee reports instead of recommendation letters. So it's actually a form that your supervisors or your immediate supervisors or doctors from your home country that would fill up. It doesn't necessarily need to be from an Australian practitioner.
Okay, there is a continuously repeating question. Just give me one. What rotation? I think you have an idea about the house job in Pakistan and India. So a 1 year house job in Pakistan. So what rotation should we take in AMC? If what rotation should we take in house job that will help in AMC? One MCQs.
I think the majority of the questions are actually from the general medicine. But I believe that all rotations would help because all subjects are covered in AMC. So I won't choose any, but I believe that every rotation would help you because there's no fixed blueprint for AMC.
Okay. another question. Just give me 1 minute. Lot of questions.
Yeah, there's a lot of questions.
Uh, uh, if you don't mind, I have a question from the PPS, Pakistan Physiological Society, the students from that side. What are your thoughts on communication skills when it comes to having a job or interviewing? Because there are a lot of people in Pakistan that prioritize their study or their work over their communication skill, seeing that they're from a relatively rural area. So, should they emphasize on improving their communication skill, or is learning basic level English enough to pass an interview or to impress the doctors taking your interview?
So okay, so let me put it this way. So for example, you've already passed AMC 1 and you want to apply for a job. So you have to pass an English test, usually PTE. So once you pass PTE, that's okay. You are already eligible to pass the job. I'm not sure if what you mean in terms of communication. I think it means how good you communicate with your peers, your colleagues, or your patients. Is that it?
I'd like to clarify, talking with your patient or talking with a fellow doctor so that they don't have a problem with you, as in your day-to-day communication or your skills in communicating.
Okay, so of course, Australia is an English-speaking country, so speaking in English is relatively important. But I believe that if you can pass the PTE exam, that is already enough. And if you pass the AMC exam, that is already enough because the AMC is already in English. If you understand that and you can already pass that, I believe you are already okay in terms of communication.
And also a counter question, is the English qualification uh, test required before taking the AMC?
No, no, please take the English test after passing the AMC, not before, because the English test has a validity of 2 years only. So take the AMC when you're already applying for jobs. It's not a requirement for your AMC 1. It's not even a requirement in job applications. But if you're going to get a job, that is a requirement by their APRA or basically their licensing body.
Okay, so there's so many questions. So another question is, if you have done EMC Part 1, Lab 1 and 2, can you do the competitive authority pathway with the experience part being done in Australia?
So sorry, I think I missed the last part. If you've
Okay,
already
I'm repeating the question again. If you have done AMC Part 1, Lab 1, P Lab 1 and 2, can you do the competent authority pathway with the experience part being done in Australia?
Yes, if you've already did the AMC 1, PLAB 1, PLAB 2, you're already under provisional registration. So you don't need to get after 1 year of supervised rotations, the 1 year clinical rotation, you are already you can already get your general registration. There
Okay, so in which specialty has maximum job opportunity in Australia?
I would say specialty, okay? I would say, and this is by the suggestion of my other friends, don't specialize. Be a GP. Be a general practitioner. If you're into that, that is a much better option. It earns you more, it's not stressful, you don't have to go through any residency training. And there's a lot of job for GPs in Australia because of their universal healthcare. Before they can go to a specialist, they have to go through GPs first. So if you do not want to go to your residency, just it's okay to be a general practitioner. But if you're asking me what specialty is best for a residency, mm, if the highest paying is what you're asking me for, you can take surgery, neurosurgery, neurology. If you're asking for majority of the specialties taken, geriatrics, internal medicine, pediatrics, OBGYN are in high demand. Oh, I see a question. Can we work as a GP and prepare for AMC Part 2 at the same time in Australia and we will get paid for that? Yes, any job that you take in Australia, even as an intern, even as a junior medical officer, you get paid. And yes, if you work as a GP, you get paid, and even if you haven't taken the AMC too. Everything is paid in Australia. Nobody works for free. Uh,
Okay, participant, any question? So any last question? I'm waiting for the participant, and then after we will conclude the session.
okay.
Okay, I think there is no question. Okay, again, can you repeat the resources for AMC?
Okay, I'll flash the resources so people can take a screenshot.
Okay, okay, okay. I will share your PowerPoint. Are you okay? I will share your PowerPoint with the whole group.
Okay, that's also fine. It's okay. So yeah.
Okay, okay. So thank you so much, the Ravish and Pakistan Physiological Society student chapter, particularly the Zimran, the Ravish president, uh, founder Abdullah Farooq, and the UCMD Ravish chapter president Anas Zab, and vice president Munhib Shahzad. And thank you so much for the participant, and special thank you to the Dr. Michelle who gave us this time and very useful discussion.
Okay. Thank you so much also for having me, and I hope I cleared some questions and not created more.
Okay, in future, if we need another webinar for guidance, so we can collaborate again.
Okay, okay.
Okay, okay. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, everyone.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Dr. Michelle, can you stay for 1 minute? Okay,
Okay.
Zimran, Anas, and Munhab, can you open your camera? So just last, Zimran.
I'm so sorry. I won't be able to open my camera.
Okay, okay, it's okay. Okay, can anybody take our picture or screenshot?
So it will be recorded in the video.
I've taken the screenshot. I've taken it.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you so much, participant. Thank you so much.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Bye bye.
I'd also like to point out that this webinar will be available on YouTube on Dr. Faizan's channel. I'll share the link to all the respective clips. Thank you.
Okay.
Khuda
Thank you
Hafiz.
so much, Zamran. Bye bye. We will share the recording soon.